The Russian police arrested hundreds of people in nationwide anti-corruption protests on Sunday, including the opposition leader Aleksei Navalny in Moscow, where thousands gathered for the biggest demonstration in 5 years against President Vladimir V. Putin. The protest in the capital, which took the form of a synchronized walk along a major shopping street to avoid a ban on unsanctioned stationary gatherings, coincided with similar rallies in 99 cities across the country, from Vladivostok in the Far East to St. Petersburg in the West, according to the organizer, Mr. Navalny's Anti-Corruption Foundation. All but 17 of these, the foundation said, had been declared illegal by the authorities. In Moscow, some protesters tried to block security vans with cars, and the authorities deployed riot police and surveillance helicopters. But they mostly avoided the brutal measures used in neighboring Belarus on Saturday against protesters in the capital, Minsk, and other cities. The police in Belarus beat and arrested hundreds of people who tried to gather for the latest in demonstrations against President Alexander Lukashenko, who has been in power since 1994. Continue reading the main story. Related coverage. Amid economic woes and public discontent, Putin critic sees opening February 4, 2015. Court orders house arrest, and no internet, for fierce critic of Putin February 28, 2014. Aleksei Navalny, viable Putin rival, is barred from a presidential run February 8, 2017. Kremlin critic says Russian Premier, Dmitry Medvedev, built property empire on graft March 2, 2017. A Putin opponent is doused in green. He makes it work. March 20, 2017. The protests in Russia on Sunday, nominally against corruption but also a rare show of public defiance against Mr. Putin, who has found a fierce and enduring critic in Mr. Navalny, appeared to be the largest coordinated display of public dissatisfaction since anti-Kremlin demonstrations in 2011 and 2012. After an election that was tainted by fraud. Protesters tried to prevent a police van from taking Mr. Navalny away and chanted, "This is our city. This is our city." Others shouted, "Russia without Putin," and held up pieces of paper denouncing the Russian president and his allies as thieves. In a Twitter post, Mr. Navalny urged his followers to continue with the demonstration after he was grabbed by police officers as he tried to join the crowds of mostly young protesters parading along Tverskaya Street in the center of Moscow. "Guys, I'm okay," he wrote. "No need to fight to get me out. Walk along Tverskaya." Our topic of the day is the fight against corruption. The Moscow Police Department said on its website that around 500 people had been arrested in the city for taking part in an unapproved public event. OVD Info, a group that monitors arrests, said the number of arrests in Moscow was at least 1,000. Demoralized and divided since the post-2011 election protests, which fizzled amid a wave of arrests and convictions, Russia's opposition has struggled in recent years to make its voice heard over a din of pro-government sentiment on state-controlled television, which invariably presents opponents of Mr. Putin as traitors in cahoots with the West. But Mr. Navalny, a charismatic anti-corruption campaigner who helped lead the 2011-12 protests, has shown a knack for turning repressive action against him and his followers to his own advantage. When an unidentified assailant doused him in a bright green liquid in Siberia last week, he exulted that his face made him look like a superhero, turning the attack into a public relations triumph. Mr. Navalny called for the protests after Russia's parliament, which is dominated by United Russia, a political party loyal to Mr. Putin, ignored demands for an investigation into accusations of corrupt activities of senior government officials. By dusk on Sunday, the protests in Moscow had wound down after sporadic scuffles between the police and protesters.